Have you ever wondered why a deeply devoted wife could one day betray her vows? It's not temptation. It's not weak morals. It's something far more silent and far more human. The most dangerous betrayals don't begin in bedrooms but in the silence no one talks about. No one walks into marriage expecting to fail. No one says I do while secretly planning the day they'll break that promise. A woman doesn't stand beside her partner, pledging a lifetime, only to betray him when no one is watching. And yet, somehow, something changes, slowly, quietly, without drama or warning. Like a crack forming beneath still waters, a glance that lingers a moment too long, a message answered just a bit too quickly, a compliment from someone other than her husband that feels too good. This isn't the kind of betrayal we often picture reckless, scandalous, dramatic. No, this is about erosion, about how even the strongest foundations crumble, not from force but from long-term neglect. It's the story of how a woman who once built a home can begin to feel like a stranger inside it. The truth, it's far more complex than we care to admit, because maybe it's not about lust, not about moral failure, not even about chasing excitement. Maybe it's about something deeply human, emotional starvation, the kind that makes you feel invisible in the place you were supposed to feel safest. Because most affairs don't start with a kiss, they start with a conversation. Most betrayals don't begin in bed, they begin in silence, the silence of being, unseen, unheard, unchosen. This is where it begins. Not with seduction, not with drama, but with something so small, you'd barely notice it. Today, we're going to uncover why even the most loyal, loving, well-intentioned married women cross lines they once swore they never would. We'll explore emotional hunger, the kind no one warns you about, the mental loopholes the brain creates to silence guilt, and the quiet desperation behind every innocent message, every stolen smile, every whispered excuse. Because once you see how it really happens, not in movies, not in fantasy, but in real life, you'll start to see the world differently. You'll see people differently, and maybe, just maybe, you'll realize the fall from grace is never one dramatic drop. It's 1,000 tiny steps. So let's begin with the emotional void. Why do married women seek outside attention? They say marriages don't die from sudden blows, they die from slow neglect. Not from shouting matches, but from the silence that creeps in between to people who once shared everything. In the beginning, marriage feels like an unshakable bond. Earlier, we explored how emotional emptiness can silently erode even the strongest marriages. Now, we go deeper into what really happens when the spark begins to fade. Do you remember those late-night talks about dreams, the whispered inside, jokes under warm blankets, the electric joy of being seen, really seen by someone who chooses you again and again, every single day? But slowly, life takes over. The deep, passionate conversations turn into grocery lists. The kisses become routine pecks before work. The warmth of connection is replaced by chores, schedules, and the daily hustle for survival. And without meaning to people who once couldn't be apart slowly become roommates. For many women, this shift is silent but devastating. You see, women are emotionally and biologically wired for connection. This isn't a flaw. It isn't weakness. It's nature. In the early stages of love, emotional needs are met by novelty, attention, and the thrill of closeness. But over time, love becomes expected. Compliments fade. Eyes stop lingering. The feeling of being chosen is replaced by the assumption that you'll always be there. And that's when the void begins to grow. Not because she stopped loving her husband, not because she wants someone else, but because she misses being seen. Psychologists call this emotional deprivation a slow starvation of the soul. At first, when the person closest to her stops noticing, she tries to shrug it off. She tells herself it's normal. That routine is just life. That passion always fades, and comfort is what really matters. But even comfort, when it's soaked in invisibility, starts to feel cold. And then one day, someone looks at her not with familiarity, but with curiosity. Not with assumption, but with attention, and suddenly, her heart skips. It's not love. It's not even desire. It's recognition, that little spark, a compliment, a question, a simple conversation. That isn't about chores or bills reminds her of a version of herself she forgot existed. Not the wife, not the mother, not the caretaker, but the woman, the individual. She may not even realize it yet, but in that small moment, something dangerous has awakened, the hunger to feel alive again. This is the trap few see coming. Most think cheating begins with dissatisfaction in the relationship, but more often, it begins with dissatisfaction in the self. When a woman feels like a shadow in her own life, she begins to search for light. And if that light comes from outside her marriage, even just words, smiles, or energy, her mind, and more importantly, her heart, starts to drift. We saw how emotional hunger can awaken something unexpected in a woman, not betrayal, but a deep, human yearning to feel seen again. Now, we step into the quiet space where temptation meets self-preservation. It doesn't mean she's immoral. It doesn't mean she's planning anything. It simply means she's human. In a world that teaches women to nurture everyone except themselves, the first man who makes her feel like a woman again, not just a mother or wife, or a caretaker, becomes dangerously compelling. And that attraction, it isn't rooted in lust. It's rooted in emotional revival. Because deep down, every human being longs to be understood, to be wanted, to be chosen, not out of routine, but out of desire. And if she no longer feels that at home, her heart begins to listen elsewhere, not because she wants to cheat, but because she's starving for something she can't even name. It's in this emotional void, this quiet and aching emptiness, where the first cracks begin to form. They're not loud, they're not obvious, but they're real. And unless someone sees them, unless someone sees her, those cracks will only grow deeper. Then comes the justification phase. The mind's way of making infidelity make sense. No one ever thinks they'll cross that line. Not her. Not the woman who once looked into her husband's eyes and said, "I choose you forever." Not the woman who once cradled her children and thought, "This is the life I always wanted." But when the heart begins to wander, the mind begins to rationalize, because humans can live with almost anything except guilt. And when guilt grows too heavy, it doesn't get confronted, it gets redefined. You see, most betrayals don't begin with betrayal. They begin with a story the mind tells to soothe the unrest of the heart. At first, it sounds innocent. We're just talking. It's nothing serious. Everyone needs a friend. I deserve to feel good about myself. This is harmless, but innocence, when repeated in secret, slowly morphs into intention. And once emotional intimacy takes root, once she starts sharing more of herself with him than with her husband, she's already walking a path her vows never imagined. The brain is a master of protection. It can bend morality to suit comfort. It can twist logic to match desire. Psychologists call it cognitive dissonance, the conflict between what we believe and what we do. And when that tension becomes too heavy to bear, the mind takes one of two paths: either change the behavior or change the belief. And far too often, belief is the easier one to rewrite. We saw how repeated justifications can turn doubt into conviction, and morality into something flexible. Now, we step into the quiet moment where a line is crossed, without even realizing it. The woman who once swore she'd never flirt starts flirting. Because it's just words, right? She hides a message thinking he wouldn't understand. It's not what it looks like. She agrees to lunch because it's just a meal. We're adults. But what she doesn't realize, or maybe doesn't want to realize, is that every justification is a permission slip. Every excuse makes the next step easier. Until they no longer feel like steps. They feel like gravity pulling her in. One of the most dangerous lies people tell themselves at this stage is, "This has nothing to do with my marriage." But if that were true, why must it be hidden? Why does her heart race when her phone lights up and her husband is near? Why is the truth being split between two worlds? Because deep down, a line has already been crossed, not with bodies, but with boundaries. You don't have to sleep with someone to be unfaithful. You just have to give away a part of yourself, a part you once vowed to keep only for one person. a sacred part, a part that now, even for a moment, belongs to someone else. And yet even as the cracks deepen, the mind keeps working. It finds new angles. If my husband paid more attention, this wouldn't be happening. I've given everything to this marriage and gotten nothing in return. Maybe this is what I need to feel alive again. Then comes the most dangerous story of them all. I deserve this. At that point, it's no longer about slipping. It's about entitlement. Entitlement turns guilt into righteousness. It turns a secret into a reward. It makes the heart feel like a victim and the action feel like justice. At this stage, the moral compass isn't broken. It's been reprogrammed. She doesn't ask if it's right or wrong. She believes it's hers. And once that shift happens betrayal feels earned, not shameful. There's very little left to stop what comes next. Because now she's not just justifying, she's convinced. 3. The breaking point. When the line is finally crossed, it doesn't happen with fireworks. No alarms. No flashing signs. It arrives quietly. So quietly, she doesn't even realize it until she's already on the other side. One message too late. One secret too deep. One choice too far from the woman she used to be. Psychologists call it threshold theory, the idea that most people don't make big decisions all at once. We explored how crossing the line doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens quietly, step by step. Now we step deeper into the space where guilt fades and repetition rewrites the truth. They don't leap, they slide into it, inch by inch, slowly, until the unthinkable becomes normal, even acceptable. The first time she texts him late at night, her heart races. She feels a jolt of guilt. The first time she deletes a message, her hands shake. The first time she lies about where she was, her chest tightens. But the second time, it's easier. The third, easier still. Because here's the brutal truth. What we repeat, we become. The mind that once resisted adapts. The guilt that once screamed softens to a whisper. The boundaries that were once crystal clear fade into fog. She tells herself, I can stop any time. This is just a phase. I just need to feel okay again, then I'll return to normal. But the brain doesn't work that way, especially not when dopamine is involved. Romantic and sexual attraction don't just feel powerful, they're chemically addictive. Neuroscientists have shown that the same parts of the brain activated by drug highs are also triggered during affairs. That feeling of being wanted, the thrill of secrecy, the high of being chosen, it becomes a drug. And like all drugs, the first hit is never enough. So she returns not for him, but for the way she feels around him, for the woman she becomes in his presence, confident, wanted, alive. Now the lies come easier, the alibis sharper, and the guilt, it's not a weight anymore, it's just a whisper. At home, she's distant. At dinner, she barely smiles. She looks at her husband and no longer sees a partner. She sees an obstacle. And heartbreakingly, her marriage becomes the affair, and the affair becomes the relationship. This is the point of no return. It doesn't matter if they've kissed. It doesn't matter if they've touched, because her heart is already gone. And when the heart shifts, the body follows. The real betrayal isn't what she's done. It's who she's become, a stranger to herself. A woman who once drew hard lines now lives beyond them. And from here, only two paths remain. She gets caught and the illusion crumbles. Or she keeps going and the secrets go deeper. We reach the point of no return, a place where the heart had long left. And the woman who once knew herself now feels like a stranger in her own story. And now, the truth comes crashing in. The truth hits like a wrecking ball. And nothing, not love, not promises, not even tears can undo what's already been done. Or she walks away, not because she's cruel, not because she stopped loving, but because she no longer recognizes the life she built. Because now she's convinced that what she found, however wrong, feels more real than what she left behind. And that is why the fall is so hard to stop. Not because it happens fast, but because it happens slowly. So slowly that by the time she realizes she's falling, she's already hit the ground. You see, this isn't just a story about infidelity. It's a story about being human, about how fragile we all are, about how dangerously easy it is to drift away from who we once were, and how quietly it all happens when no one is looking. Because the truth is, no one is immune. Not her, not him, not you. Not the ones who pray every night, not the ones who've been loyal for decades, not the ones who still wear their wedding rings with pride. What makes someone vulnerable isn't weakness, it's emptiness. And when the people we love the most stop seeing us, stop listening, stop touching, stop noticing, something inside us starts to dim, not from resentment, not from cruelty, but from starvation, emotional starvation. Every person, no matter how principled or strong, has a breaking point. And if that emotional need is ignored for long enough, it will find a way to be met. Even if it's in the wrong place, that's not an excuse, it's a warning. Because what begins as loneliness becomes longing. What begins as longing becomes distraction. And what begins as distraction becomes destruction. What most people don't understand is this: by the time someone cheats physically or emotionally, they've already been gone for a while. Not from the house, but from the relationship, from the closeness, from the trust, from the intimacy. And maybe the saddest part is, no one noticed. No one said, "Are you okay?" No one fought to keep the light on when she began to fade into the dark dots. So what does this mean? If you're married, look again. Look closer. See your partner, not just as a mother, a father, a provider, but as a person. We saw how easy it is to drift, not because we're bad, but because we're human. But sometimes all someone needs is to be chosen again. Someone who still wants to feel wanted. Someone who still wants to feel chosen. Because love isn't something you say once. It's something you show again and again. In the way you listen, in the way you reach out, in the way you see them, even when life gets loud. And if you're the one filling someone else's void, if you're already walking the dangerous edge, texting someone you shouldn't, feeling something you haven't felt in years, stop. Not because you're bad, not because you're broken, but because there's still time to turn around. The thrill you're chasing, it's not about him, it's about a part of you that's been silent for too long. A part that craves connection, depth and intimacy. And maybe, just maybe, that part doesn't need secrecy. It needs honesty. Have the hard conversations. Say the things you've been holding in. Ask for what you need even if your voice shakes. Because there's still hope. Even for the marriage that's gone cold, if the people are willing to warm it up together. But once you cross the line, once your heart fully belongs somewhere else, there's no easy way back. Only pain. Only fallout. Only regret. So before you take one more step, ask yourself, is this who I want to become? Is this what love should feel like? And is the price I'm about to pay worth a fleeting sense of being wanted? Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is stay. Not because you have to, but because you choose to, again and again. That's what real love is, and it's never too late to fight for it. In the end, this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's not just a warning for struggling relationships. It's a reminder that love doesn't sustain itself. It needs presence, attention, patience and effort every single day. Because what breaks a marriage isn't always one big mistake. It's the long silence between two people who once shared everything. It's the look that no longer lingers. The touch that's become routine. No one wakes up one day and decides to cheat. It begins with emotional emptiness left unspoken, and ends when no one cares enough to notice it anymore. So if you're in a relationship, pause, look, listen. Don't wait until the silence becomes permanent, or until the person beside you starts to disappear. Sometimes, what saves love isn't grand gestures. It's small acts of presence repeated with intention. Real love isn't perfect. It gets tired. It gets tested. It gets lost. But if two people still want to find their way back, there is always a way home. If this video resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear this today. And don't forget to subscribe, because here we don't just talk about love, we learn how to hold on to it.